Monitor exercise. Mostly Smiths and they usually can call parents of these boys. Yes. They propose and count sports that are boys. Which he says every day. I was speaking of those. Was a industrial story from our class. Were you there? What is it?
No one.
A industrial story.
Oh yes, I
Was
was.
us, and now cameras were inside. You were there.
Yes, I was. I was there day before this.
Where is it?
Yes.
It's with flag. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. No, I see something else. I told 1 year. It's old, right? Slowly. Yeah. कोई ऐसे हर संदेश can follow it.
She giving on.
I no idea. So she shouted us with premature and who else? Manas. Yes. Who else? 2, 3 more. Everyone was complaining about it.
About me. What books? I won't say anybody.
We are best friends. The group.
Manas,
We
Venu.
you are yeah, you are the friend.
No,
That group only.
Venu, please call out the names. What books?
Voice.
I won't see one. That will be.
They say no. They say no. He was shouting. He's annoying. हाँ they complained ask Adish. Well don't say no ask Adish ऐसे. They just say he they told about the Bengal something फिर Adish here.
Good evening. Only the entire class is there, no? Huh? The other day only few were there.
Yes.
Only 4 were there, not the other day.
Yes.
These are all Ryan students, no? Picnic over. You jate ho picnic. What did you do there? Fun? You also know? जाना ही पड़ता है. If you don't go, इंटरनल्स करता है क्या? नहीं ना? करता है क्या इंटरनल मार्क्स जाता है? चलो good. You are a new student or
Yes.
today? First day?
First day is the first day.
Bio first होगा ना? Okay. So what was the last topic we studied?
Small intestine.
Small intestine. So we must have finished the parts of the alimentary canal: mouth, esophagus,
Yes.
stomach done. Stomach
Yes.
we are done. Okay. So far, what did we discuss was what is gastric juice made up of? What are the components of gastric juice? Gastric juice consists of hydrochloric acid, pepsin, and mucus. What is the role of hydrochloric acid? What is the role of hydrochloric acid?
It does put into an acidic medium so that it can
Act on it. Correct. What are the functions of hydrochloric acid? To talk about alimentary canal, and now that we start with some important aspects of stomach. Remember, the first thing always to remember that the different parts of the alimentary canal, their functions are very important for you to remember. The terms, the components, gastric juices, enzyme के नाम, उनके functions, you'll have to remember this way. So the other day we completed with stomach, mouth, esophagus, stomach. What was peristalsis? All of you should remember. Peristalsis is the wave of contraction that takes place all throughout the length of the alimentary canal, so that the mixing of the food takes place and the passage of the food from one region of the alimentary canal to the other can happen. So peristalsis is one word. The other day we had discussed this. I had discussed the Previous day also, students who were not there the other day, please if I could see, if you have written this word, the definition of peristalsis. What is peristalsis? The wave of contraction and relaxation that takes place all throughout the length of the alimentary canal. What is the significance? Mixing of the food. Passage of the food from one region of the alimentary canal to the other. Next is the few parts that we have missed, as and when I discuss answers and all, you will get it as it is, not to worry. Let us take two questions. Let me see if you are able to answer. Number one. Name the inactive enzyme produced in the stomach. Name the inactive enzyme produced in the रुको ना, बाकी लोगों को सोचने दो. Name the inactive enzyme released in the stomach. Name the inactive enzyme released in the stomach. Full stop. How is it activated? How is it activated? You will leave 2 lines for the answer. 2 lines for the answer, and then go to the next question. Go to the next question. Why does carbohydrate and fats, why does carbohydrate and fat digestion, why does carbohydrate and fat digestion does not initiate in the stomach? Why does carbohydrate and fat digestion does not initiate in the stomach? Answer to the first question, all of you know. Please write it down on your own. Answer to the first question, all of you know. So, what is the inactive form of the enzyme? Pepsinogen. Pepsinogen. What is the inactive form of the enzyme produced in the stomach? A part of gastric juice, and that is pepsinogen. The next part of the question that I asked you, how is it activated? How is it activated? In the presence of hydrochloric acid. How is it activated? In the presence of hydrochloric acid. The other day I gave you one equation, very simple equation, that also you can write and in one sentence, that is enough for your answer. Pepsinogen in the presence of hydrochloric acid results in the activation of the enzyme, that is pepsin. Next, now the next question we'll try answering. What is the next question? The next question says that in the stomach, why only protein digestion takes place? Why not the other type of nutrient, that is carbohydrate and fat? Why not? Carbohydrate and fat digestion does not start in the stomach or does not take place in the stomach at all. What is the reason? The reason is the acidic medium of the stomach. The stomach has a acidic medium. The pH of the stomach is roughly around 2 to 3. So that pH is insufficient, or that pH is not an appropriate medium for carbohydrate fat digestion. Carbohydrate fat digestion always requires a alkaline medium. So we will write the answer, right? The medium of the stomach is acidic. Medium of the stomach is acidic. Okay? Medium of the stomach is acidic, which favors. Medium of the stomach is acidic, which favors protein digestion. Medium of the stomach is acidic, which favors protein digestion. And carbohydrate and fat digestion can take place. Carbohydrate and fat digestion can take place only in carbohydrate and fat digestion can take place only in an alkaline medium. Carbohydrate and fat digestion can take place only in an alkaline medium. So we now start with the third part of the alimentary canal. What is the third part of the alimentary canal? We try to understand the small intestine. Small intestine, large intestine, the intestinal regions to understand. So when I talk about the small intestine, starts from the stomach. The first part of the small intestine is very, very important when I talk in terms of digestion cue, because on one side of the small intestine there is the pancreas, the other side of the small intestine there is the liver. The liver and the pancreas both are preparing, synthesizing a large number of digestive juices, and all these digestive juices will enter into the duodenum, the first part of the small intestine. So this entire stretch of the small intestine is very, very important when I have to talk about digestion. A large number of digestive steps can occur here, does occur here. But then this entire small intestine, if I am talking about, this small intestine is almost about, this small intestine is almost about 7 meters in length. I will talk about the entire alimentary canal has a length of 9 meters. So if I'm talking about the small intestine only of 7 meters, that means it is the longest part of the alimentary canal. The small intestine is the longest part of the alimentary canal. And talking about the esophagus, no, the esophagus is comparatively much shorter. So what are some special features of the small intestine? The small intestine is extremely coiled. The small intestine is extremely coiled and it is extremely narrow. The small intestine is coiled, narrow and long. I already gave you an idea, it is almost about 7 meters long. So what is the significance? The small intestine is extremely coiled, narrow, long. The significance is the food passes through the small intestine very, very slow. Since the food passes through the small intestine very, very slowly, there is enough time that the food can interact with the digestive juices and the process of digestion can happen very efficiently. Think of this small intestine in case if the small intestine instead of being 7 meters would have been just 3 meters in length, almost like the large intestine. The large intestine is broad and short in comparison. So if the small intestine also would have been broad and short, then what would have been the difference? The food that we eat efficiently would not have got digested. Because in the stomach only few steps of digestion happen and we are absolutely dependent on the small intestine. It is the small intestine which can digest all the different types of proteins, all the different type of fats, all the other different type of carbohydrates, because the large intestine does not show any steps of digestion. So what is the significance that the small intestine is long, coiled, narrow? What am I supposed to write as an answer? It allows the food pass through very slowly so that it can mix with the digestive juices and carry out the process of digestion very efficiently. Take this question. What is the significance? What is the significance of most of these are your text questions or the questions that we have in our volume or the both questions. So later when we go through the volume questions, you just have to tick, and if there's any extra that you have to solve. What is the significance of the small intestine being extremely long, coiled and narrow? What is the significance of the small intestine being extremely long, coiled and narrow? Answer. Answer. The food passes through the small intestine very slowly. The food passes through the small intestine very slowly and mixes and mixes with the digestive juices. Full stop. Mixes with the digestive juices. Mixes with the digestive juices. And this allows efficient digestion. This allows efficient digestion of food. This allows efficient digestion. What happened? What is so funny? Yes, tell me, what happened? Yes, something happened. This is not your school, my dear. Get up and go and sit down there. What was my last words? Tell me there.
Allows efficient digestion
Of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Allows efficient digestion of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So now, when we are talking about the small intestine, this is one major feature to understand: why long, why wide, why narrow. So this is one answer that always to be written. Now, next is, what are the major parts of the small intestine? The major parts of the small intestine, you are basically supposed to know the name of this and one more part here, which is not mentioned in your book, but the reference of this is there. Do you have your textbooks, all of you? If you have, please refer to the diagram. Please refer to the diagram. And in that diagram, you can mark these parts. You can mark this part as duodenum. So, which are the parts of the small intestine? The small intestine divided into three major parts. Which are the three major parts of the small intestine? The first part is known as duodenum. The second part is known as jejunum. And the third part is known as ileum. Talking about the digestive role, the duodenum and the ileum plays major functions. We will learn. So duodenum. Now I want those of you who have your textbook, please mark this part as duodenum. This part, right? Start from the stomach, the first part of the small intestine. Mark as duodenum. This middle region mark as jejunum. Mark as anywhere here you can mark. Pura portion, middle portion is jejunum. Anywhere here you mark jejunum. See that figure there in your textbook. Can I have this? In your textbook, see there the small intestine is marked. No, so see here. The small intestine is marked. Two arrows are there, no, for the small intestine. The upper arrow actually is duodenum. The lower arrow is actually jejunum. जो arrows है इसमें already, तो जो upper arrow है ना, that is actually the duodenum, and जो lower arrow है, that is jejunum. Now ileum you mark the part at the end, small intestine finishing up, joining with large, that is the ileum. This part has major significance. So ileum you should know. So this last part you just label as ileum, the last part of the small intestine. जहाँ पे where the small intestine goes and unites with the large intestine, that part you can mark as ileum. So which are the three parts? Again is what? So now the three parts of small intestine. Which are the three parts of small intestine? The duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. We talk about why the duodenum and the ileum very special. First of all, let us talk about the duodenum. Now, what is the location of the duodenum? The duodenum has liver on one side and the pancreas on the other. And these two digestive glands, the liver and the pancreas, would release its digestive juices here. The liver would release its digestive juices here, and the pancreas and the liver would release here. And now that I talk about the duodenum, plays a very important role in bringing about the digestive processes, but one major function that it does is makes the food or makes the acidic food alkaline. Makes the acidic food which is coming from the stomach alkaline. Because the duodenum will collect the acidic food which is coming, acidic undigested food which is coming from the stomach. The food which is in the stomach, partially digested food which is in the stomach is all acidic in nature. Protein digestion has already started. And this undigested food which is coming down here, now the pH of the food changes. Now the medium of the food changes from acidic to alkaline. Why is the food in the duodenum alkaline? What is the reason that the food in the duodenum now becomes alkaline? Because it receives the juices from the pancreas and the liver. And that is also one reason why so many steps of digestion takes place in the duodenum. So how is the duodenum specialized? You get this question for 2 marks, 1 mark. How is the duodenum specialized? The duodenum is specialized is the first part of the small intestine. It is specialized because receiving juices from the pancreas and the liver and makes the food, the acidic food coming from the stomach becomes alkaline. And now it favors carbohydrate and fat digestion because it is intestine, the last part of the alimentary canal where all the digestive processes should be over now. Alkaline medium is a must for various different types of digestive processes in the body. Jejunum, if I have to talk about that, what is the role of the jejunum? Just carrying out various steps of digestion. It is not actually receiving any other different type of digestive juices, nothing. Now I talk about the ileum. I talk about the ileum. Why is the ileum special? The ileum is special because when we look into the ileum is special because the inner lining is extensively folded. The inner lining of the ileum is extremely folded. Now, what is the meaning of this? Inner lining extremely folded. If I talk about the section of the duodenum, say suppose I want to see the section of the duodenum, how should it appear? It will have a central lumen and then some layers of cells and some layers of cells. So this is the wall of the lumen, the wall of the duodenum, I understand. Jejunum also almost the same thing. But if I want to draw the section of the ileum, would it be the same? No, it will not be the same. Rather, the inner wall of the ileum is extremely folded like this. And then there will be some walls that is there. So what is the difference? The difference is the inner wall of the ileum is extremely folded because in this part, ileum, 2 processes are majorly happening. One is the process of digestion, definitely. And what is the second process that is happening? That is known as absorption that is happening. So if I try to see that how would the internal structure of the ileum would look like. Now what is this tube? This is the section of the ileum I want to see. Exactly something what I have drawn here. This entire tube is the ileum. Cut it in a section. Kaise? Cross section. Cut it in a section, you get to see that on the inner wall there are numerous finger-like projections. There are numerous finger-like projections. Ab ek particular projection, if I talk about, what are these finger-like projections known as? Villi. Ek single ko bolenge villus. So this single, there are hundreds of them. So definitely the membrane of the inner wall is increasing many-fold. Agar if I talk about what is the length of this membrane, and I understand that the length of this membrane is 2 millimeter, then the length of this membrane would be what? Nothing more than 100 millimeter because it is extremely folded and folded and folded and so many of them are there. So this folds and egg single villus is again folded inside. So if I talk about that this single villus, try understanding the inner wall of the ileum is extremely folded, increasing the surface area many times. Increasing the surface area how? Because that one membrane is folded into 100 more folds like this and one single fold is known as villus. Look into the structure of a villus. How does it appear? One single villus will have a thin layer of cells. What type of cells? Epithelial. Only one single layer of cells, so making the outer lining very thin so that movement of molecules can happen. We'll talk about that. Also, the inside of the villus, cut the villus to see what is there inside. Thin wall definitely, and inside a huge number of blood vessels to allow movement of molecules. But this villus, again, if I try seeing the inner wall, how this inner wall, just now I said, no, that every single villus has got a wall made up of one single layer of cells. Look into one cell. How does this cell look like? This cell again has got a number of 5 more membranes, जिसको microvilli बोला जाता है. So that means one single villi, one epithelial cell, that epithelial cell again having so many more membranes. So definitely the surface area of the villi or surface area of the ileum is increased so many fold. But why is it necessary? We are going to talk about this process later. Why the ileum has to be specialized with the villi and all these structures? To bring about efficient absorption. We will learn what is the meaning of this. So right now, talking about small intestine, what are some special features of the small intestine? I already mentioned that the small intestine is extremely narrow and coiled. This feature you have to know. The parts of the small intestine you'll have to know. And the next is, what are the most important regions of the small intestine? The duodenum and the ileum. Why the duodenum is specialized and why the ileum is specialized? Why is the ileum specialized? Because it has got numerous finger-like projections known as villi. Questions that you get here, many different type of questions you will get here. Why is the ileum specialized? I just now mentioned. What are the functions of the ileum? The functions of the ileum, digestion as well as absorption. But if I have to write down what are the functions of the duodenum and the jejunum, can I write absorption? No, because duodenum and jejunum does not contain the villi. Do they have the finger-like projections known as the villi? No, they don't have. So since they don't have, the duodenum and the jejunum is only carrying out one function. And what is that function they are carrying out? That is digestion only. Because duodenum and jejunum, they don't have the villi. Am I clear? So I'm talking about how is the ileum specialized? Write down this question. Right. The special features of ileum. Right. Special features of ileum. Right. Special features of ileum, which or look at that word which, right? Special features of ileum adapted for its functions. Adapted for its functions. Answer. Ileum is the last part or the third part. Ileum is the last part of the small intestine. Full stop. The inner wall of the ileum, is extensively folded. Inner wall of the ileum is extensively folded. Inner wall of the ileum is extensively folded into numerous finger-like projections. Extensively folded into numerous finger-like projections known as villi. V-I-L-L-I. Full stop. Next paragraph. The presence of villi enables ileum to carry out efficient absorption of digested nutrients. Efficient absorption of digested nutrients. Now, otherwise, if you get general questions like, state the function of, write down two functions of small intestine. What are you supposed to write? The same thing.
Digestion.
Absorption. What are the two functions of digestion? Write down the functions of duodenum. You will generally not get this question. Function of duodenum and jejunum specifically you will not get. You will either get, write down the special functions of the ileum or the last part of the small intestine, or write down the functions of small intestine. So write down the functions of small intestine. This itself is your answer. Because small intestine carries out various steps of digestion and absorption. Digestion you already know. The moment I start talking about digestion, now that we are talking about the small intestine and all these things, Villas, something more you have to understand. Digestion, the moment I talk about digestion, what you are supposed to understand? For the process of digestion, certain special chemical substances known as enzymes are necessary. So, when I speak on digestion, what am I understanding? A piece of bread that I eat, the carbohydrate part of the bread should get converted to simplest form. So I would say, if I talk about digestion and absorption, what is the difference? I am talking about the carbohydrate of the rice or the roti or the bread that I consume. This has to get broken down to the simplest form. So ye hai digestion. What has happened? The process of breakdown of complex substances to simpler forms. This is what is digestion. But where is this glucose now present? These molecules of glucose are all here now in the central cavity of the ileum. Will it, if it remains here, are the body cells getting any benefit? No. This glucose has to now enter the blood and then go to the body cells. So if I'm talking about this process is what is known as absorption. So from the cavity of the ileum, from the lumen of the ileum, the molecules, I now talk about glucose, there are so many more. These molecules have to enter the blood vessel and then go to the other cells of the body. How will they enter the blood vessel? Cross this fine thin layer. How can they enter the blood vessel of the villus? Inside every single villus, the blood vessel is there. So the molecules are all on the outer surface, the glucose and etc. that we speak. These molecules will pass through the thin layer. That is the reason the villus is made in such a way that it has got only one single layer of epithelial cells. Which process am I talking about? Where the molecules move from a region of high concentration to a diffusion. So I am talking about this single layer of epithelial cells here, where the molecules of, these are all solutes, no? I am talking about the glucose and the amino acids and etc. moving from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration inside the villus to get absorbed or dissolved into the blood. This is what we are talking about, is absorption. तो विलस के कौन से दो फीचर्स है which is allowing the process of absorption possible? Number one है thin lining of epithelial cells and number two है large supply of blood vessels. What are some special features of the villus which is allowing this process happen? Villus absorption means what? Absorption means the diffusion of the digested molecules or the digested nutrients enter the blood. That is the meaning of absorption. What is the difference between digestion and absorption? Are you clear? What is meant by digestion? When the nutrients are getting broken down to the simplest form possible. इसके आगे breakdown हमारे body cells में possible ही नहीं है. This is called digestion. Then what will happen to these molecules? What to do? This has to enter the body cell so that they are broken down to get to produce energy. So these molecules will be carried into the blood by some specialized layer method. कुछ तो होगा. That is what is known as absorption. Differentiate between digestion and absorption. लिखो bit fast ना. थोड़ा सीधा. Differentiate between digestion and absorption. The two major functions of small intestine. Differentiate between digestion and absorption. Are you following? Are you all understanding? Whenever there is a doubt, see that you are learning in the class itself, see that you are understanding, not understanding, please raise questions. Differentiate between digestion and absorption, Liko. Digestion is the breakdown of complex nutrients. Digestion is the breakdown of complex nutrients to their simplest form, utilizing special chemical substances, that is enzymes, utilizing special chemical substances known as enzymes. Utilizing special chemical substances known as enzymes. Full stop. Next, you can write the diffusion of the digested nutrients. The diffusion of digested nutrients. Diffusion of digested nutrients from the small intestine towards the blood vessels of the villi, is known as absorption. Just put a note and write something like this. You write, just put a note and write two special features of villi. What are the two special features of villi which enable absorption? Two special features of villi that enable absorption. Two special features of villi that enable absorption. Number one, what did I say? Thin wall consisting of or made up of only one layer of epithelial cells. Number one, thin wall. What are the two special features of the villus? Number one, thin wall consisting of only one single layer of epithelial cells. Consisting of only one single layer of epithelial cells. Number two, rich supply of blood vessels. Rich supply of blood vessels. So that is about the special features of the small intestine. Function steps we'll have to study later. We finished with the alimentary canal, talking about the last part of the alimentary canal. What is the last part? The large intestine. Listen to me carefully. After that, एक question दूंगी जो तुमको दिखोगे. I talk about the large intestine. What did I tell you? For the small intestine, you are understanding the parts and the functions. But if I have to compare now, what are the parts of the large intestine then? And what are their functions? So talking about the large intestine, comparatively, I talk about the fourth part, that is the large intestine, And what are the parts? Large intestine is comparatively broader and shorter. If I have to talk about the features, it is not long and coiled and narrow. No, that only goes for small intestine. This is comparatively broad and short. Parts kya hai? The first part is cecum. And the second part, now this is optional for you. This you don't need that much. Cecum and colon, and the third part is rectum. So, talking about the major difference between small and large, remember, this is the first difference I talk about between small and large intestine. And what is the next I'm talking about? The parts we can mention, very good, this is optional way. Cecum, colon, rectum. Functions abhi kya hai? What are the functions of the large intestine? Does the large intestine produce any enzyme? Does the wall of the large intestine produce any enzyme? No. Large intestine के आसपास कोई digestive gland है? Nothing. So definitely there is no scope where the large intestine can show the process of digestion of food. Digestion of food हो नहीं सकता है. Then what would be the functions of the large intestine? The functions of the large intestine would be absorption of. Now the food जो partially almost digested है. Food is almost digested, but what is the consistency? Almost semi-fluid hai, because so much of digestive juices, and most of them are watery in nature. So much of these digestive juices have entered, and the cells of the intestine also has released enzymes. So, ye jo partially digested food which is there in the small intestine, they have a consistency which is almost semi-fluid. So, ye semi-fluid consistency now enters into the large intestine. And as this starts moving, the wall of the large intestine starts reabsorbing water. Matlab, maximum amount of water given to the surrounding blood vessels. The water will move through the wall of the large intestine and come in contact with the blood vessels on the surrounding. Taki, the undigested food which is there in the large intestine is not losing away so much of water. The water has to be retained back in our body, otherwise the blood will become thick. The water has to be retained back in our body, otherwise the volume of the blood will be lesser. 6 liters say 5 liters kabhi hona hi nahi chahiye. And that's the reason when a person is suffering from diarrhea, cholera, what happens? The person starts feeling weak. The person is extremely dehydrated too, because digestion nahi ho raha, and then so much of water is thrown out along with the undigested food. But normally that will not happen. For a normal healthy individual, what? As the undigested food is moving and moving, there is a whole lot of reabsorption of water. The body is taking back all the water, the blood volume, everything is restored, and only the undigested waste will be released out. So what are the two functions we will write? The functions are reabsorption of water, meaning removal of the water from the undigested part to the body cells, to the blood. Reabsorption of water through the wall of the large intestine, and the last point is, the second point is the formation of the waste substances. So we would write formation of the semi-solid waste substances, and the specific word to write is formation of the fecal matter, feces. So what are the two differences? Now you are very clear about the large and the small intestine. Based on the function, I have been talking about the function of the large intestine. These are the functions of the small intestine. Small intestine carries out digestion, absorption. Large intestine carries out this. Small intestine is this, and the large intestine is short and broad. Yeah. This is a question that you get. You may just write that question. I think most of you have written the points already. Just write that question. Difference between large and small intestine. You were asked in the exam. Difference between large and small intestine. Structure, function. तो structural point अगर पूछा गया तो only ये point लिखना है. Structure. Functional difference पूछा गया, then only this functional difference you have to write down. So this is about the alimentary canal. What are the parts of the alimentary canal so far we have studied? The mouth, esophagus, mouth and buccal can be same. Esophagus, stomach, large intestine. What is one property all throughout from the esophagus to the large intestine? Peristalsis. Peristalsis. The rhythmic wave of contraction, relaxation happens in the esophagus or the stomach, also small intestine, large intestine also. And what is the entire tube-like structure made up of? Smooth muscles. Smooth muscles. Now, if these are the parts of the alimentary canal, then now we have to understand that what are digestive glands. We talk about the digestive glands. Let us start now. Alimentary canal ho gaya. Now the next part of the digestive system would be digestive glands. What are they secreting? Now which part is secreting which enzyme? That is the next part to understand. So now that we are talking about the digestive glands, let us start with the first one, that is in the mouth region, known as the salivary glands. What are the salivary glands? What do they release? So I am talking about the digestive glands now, and under the concept of digestive glands, we start talking about the first one, that is the salivary glands. Where are these salivary glands present? Now, remember, when you study these parts of the chapter, there is no need of learning so much. Specific points yaad rakho, naam yaad rakho, function yaad rakho. That much only. Salivary glands. Which are the salivary glands? The first is the parotid glands. The second is the submandibular glands, and the third is the sublingual glands. Lingual, sublingual. Where are they? Look into their locations. I talk about the parotid here. The parotid. Submandibular here. It is spread up here, this particular region. So quite often you will see, if you press these regions, you will feel that I think some saliva secretion is bit more. Sublingual kahan pe? Just below the tongue. These three glands that we are talking about, primary glands here, what are they releasing? Collectively, they are releasing a watery fluid. What is this watery fluid known as? Saliva. Nahin. What is this watery fluid that they release? Saliva. All these three glands together, they release a transparent, colorless fluid known as saliva. What is it composed of? It is composed of a large amount of water, small amount of salts, and then a specific enzyme. And which is this enzyme? Salivary amylase. Uska pet name kya hai? Salivary amylase ka pet name kya hai? P silent है, खाली P silent है बाकी. Tyalin, P-T-Y-A-L-I-N. So what are the alternative names? Salivary amylase. Name the enzyme present in saliva. क्या है answer? Salivary amylase. Name the enzyme present in saliva. Salivary amylase. Now, the word amylase. Now that we start learning the names of the enzyme, जहाँ पे amylase दिखाई दिया, always you should understand that this is a carbohydrate digesting enzyme. We will come across many more. So, what should be the function of the salivary amylase? It will always help in carbohydrate digestion. This will help in carbohydrate digestion. What about the second gland? The second gland that we talk about is liver, the largest gland of the body. So now that I talk about the liver, the largest gland of the body, in this case, what is the location of the liver you have come across? What is the location of the liver?
Just beside the stomach.
The location of the liver is always on the right side, opposite to the stomach. Right side, opposite to the stomach, or just below the rib cage. These are the locations always you should write. So now, this liver that we are talking about, this is the largest gland of the body. What is it producing? It is producing a yellowish colored juice secretion, and this secretion is known as the bile juice. Composition of the bile juice. What is the bile juice made up of? This also has small amount of water. Variety of salts, sodium, potassium salts are there. Sodium, potassium salts it has. And then it has got various, okay, I will write here together. The bile salts together like that. Bile salts are a common component here. Bile salts. What are bile salts? The sodium, potassium salts are there. And then there are some bile pigments. The bile pigments and the bile pigments also specific pigments are there. So if I have to talk about that liver, what is this liver releasing? The liver would be producing a secretion known as the bile juice. What is the color? Something yellowish. This bile juice will be carried to the gallbladder, stored in the gallbladder for a short period of time, where certain components get little bit functional. We would say they become more or less processed. So now they become functional, something like the pepsinogen to pepsin, no? You remember that concept? So most of the chemicals in our body like that. Just jab release hota hai, it is always in the inactive form and then it gets activated. So this entire group of cells will be releasing the bile juice, then gets stored here in the gallbladder. Once processed and functional, it will be thrown into the duodenum. It will be entering by the way of some tubes. It will enter by the way of these tubes into the small intestine. Because the name of, what was the name of the first part of the small intestine? Duodenum. The duodenum, it will be released. But then now we want to understand what is the composition of the bile juice. Clear hai? So function is what? Talking about the function of the bile juice, bile salts play an important role. Talking about the function of the bile juice, bile salts play an important role, and this help in digestion of the fat molecules. Bile salts help in digestion of the fat molecules. Bile juice में कोई enzyme है? Bile juice में कोई enzyme दिख रहा है? नहीं, मैंने कुछ गलती किया? कोई enzyme है ही नहीं. The bile salts does not contain any enzyme. The bile juice does not contain any enzyme. Always remember, it is only the bile salts which break down complex food substances to simpler form. And that also what type of nutrient? Only fats. No proteins, no carbohydrates. What is the other gland we are left with? We are left with pancreas. What is the location of the pancreas?
Right side.
No. What is the location of the pancreas? Below the stomach. Below the stomach always. So I talk about the third gland, and the third gland is pancreas. Location is always below the stomach, to remember, below the stomach. And next is, what does it release? If I talk about the pancreas releases again juice, and this is known as the pancreatic juice. The pancreatic juice basically does not have too many pigments there. So what would be the composition of the pancreatic juice? Pancreatic juice again has got an adequate amount of water. It has got certain amount of salts and mucus and variety of enzymes. It has got variety of enzymes. Some common prominent enzymes to talk about. One is known as the pancreatic amylase. The other is known as the pancreatic trypsin. And the other is known as the pancreatic lipase. I already told you amylase jaise, the moment you see amylase, what are you supposed to remember? Amylase is always helping carbohydrate digestion. Pepsin,
Protein digestion.
trypsin, उसका ही भाई है. Trypsin helps in pepsin, trypsin, इस तरह के जो भी नाम मिलेगा, always they help in protein digestion, and lipase is always for fats. Okay? So now that I talk about amylases, what are they meant for? Amylases always meant for digestion of carbohydrates. And if I talk about trypsin, always meant for protein digestion, different types of protein digestive steps we are going to come across. Lipase is to always understand, helps in fat digestion. So these are the three different digestive glands that we are talking about, three regions of the body, but always very close to the alimentary canal. Now tell me one major difference between alimentary canal and digestive glands.
The food moves throughout the entire alimentary canal, but it does not move to the digestive
Correct.
canal.
This is the point that you should write. When you get this question in your exams, you can put that question. Abhi answer mat likho, but take that question. Likh ke rakho. This type of questions you will be asked. One difference. What is the major difference between alimentary canal? Or some, you may not get a question this way. You may get what is the difference between parts like the esophagus, stomach, and the liver and the pancreas. What is the difference? The food would not enter into the liver, pancreas, but liver and pancreas will release enzymes. The food would pass through the esophagus, stomach. Digestion is happening inside these parts. No? So these are the points to always write down. So I told you what are the three digestive glands and their secretions. The last part of this topic that is left is now for us to understand how digestion happens. No, we are not done with the story. I said difference. How is alimentary canal? How are parts of alimentary canal different from digestive glands? How are parts of the alimentary canal different from digestive glands? The last part from this topic that I said, steps of digestion. Now we'll have to understand carbohydrate, how does it get digested, proteins, how does it get digested, and so on. Read till this part of the chapter so it becomes easier for you to follow. And whenever things are not clear, please raise questions. Then it will be easier for you to again recollect when you study for your exams. She made me absent of one day. She was absent. I found the words. I should be absent. No, Rekha ma'am found me absent for one day. Yeah, and I was like, why did you found me absent?
मम्मी को मिस कर रहा हूँ ओनली है अरे मम्मी को मिस कर रहा हूँ मम्मी या कोई भी ले लो क्लास में आने के बाद फोन यूज नहीं करना अरे वो टीचर लोग बोलते हैं कि मम्मी को पहले बोल दो कि यार कॉल करना है ना रिसेप्शन पे जाके टेलीफोन से करने का कि मैं क्लास में पहुंच गया ठीक है अरे वो नहीं करना है यूज ही नहीं करना है वो मैम ने अलाउ किया कौन से मैम ने कोई तो नाम नहीं पता क्लास में फोन अलाउ किया है नहीं नहीं मम्मी क्लास से पहले मैसेज करना है मम्मी को